At the station front, Haruhi spotted Nagato and me and waved her hands hugely, like a cheerleader with a great flag. Asahina was there, right next to her, with Koizumi a bit removed. Haruhi was in fine form, Asahina had a happier than usual smile, and Koizumi made eye contact with me but said nothing, only brushing aside his bangs with a finger. Kyon! Yuki! You guys sure took your time. Where'd you end up? Don't tell me you spent the whole time at the library keeping warm. I guess that'd be okay if there are any mysterious spots around there, though. So were there? Hell no, I said. There were no books that could suck you into their world upon opening them, nor were there books whose characters would leap from their pages into the real world. Maybe in a stack of a bigger, older library, but not there, I told her. Good point. We'll have to try to find a place like that next time. An antique bookstore or something. I'd love to rummage through Tsudia's family-only storehouse, but there's probably nothing but ancestors' last testaments. Haruhi started walking without explaining where she was going. Maybe Asahina and Koizumi already knew. They happily followed her, as did Nagato and I. I was well aware that putting to Haruhi the question of where she was heading would be pointless. She'd keep walking even if the destination were totally unknown, eventually stopping and pointing at her feet, proudly declaring, "We're here!" The SS SOS Brigade had Captain Suzumiya at the tiller, and if it were really a seagoing vessel, we'd probably end up in Bermuda. As it was, Haruhi took us to the same Italian restaurant we visited the previous day. I gazed at Asahina as I ate lunch, full of complicated emotions. She was placidly eating her seafood carbonara with a knife and spoon. It was a calming scene, but soon she'd be heading back in time to flail around for me for days. I wanted to tell her, at the very least, about the kidnapping part. As I agonized over it, an irritated Haruhi prodded my plate with her fork. Kyon, why are you spaced out about? Got something on your mind? Tell me all about it, and I'll give you some good advice, as your brigade chief. Her eyes shone with energy, the eyes of someone happily taken in by the most childish April Fool's prank. Also, about that phone call, did you forget? The prank call. What was that? That was... I took a drink of water to buy myself some time. It was a stupid joke. I felt like I'm making a prank call. I guess I really shouldn't have. I'm sorry. I glanced briefly at Asahina. Haruhi did likewise. Asahina made a confused expression, her utensils freezing in place halfway to bring a bite of pasta to her mouth. The next moment, Haruhi and my eyes met again. I guess it's okay, said Haruhi generously. Just make it a better prank next time, okay? You'll get bonus points if it makes me laugh. If you get enough, you can trade them in for a special prize for me. But if the joke's stupid, I'll dock points without mercy. Remember that. Felt like Haruhi's roundabout way of asking me to prank call her. As I was agonizing over having to think of jokes every time I called her, Haruhi and Asahina giggled conspiratorially. Once lunchtime was over, Haruhi was happy to call it a day. I'd known this would happen, thanks to Mikuru Asahina, but it was still impressive to see after 2 consecutive days of patrolling, even Haruhi would get tired, though her face remained as energetic as always. Asahina hid her smiling mouth with her hand as she nodded to me in parting. Nagato wore her standard lack of expression, and Koizumi had the same pleasant smile I was sick of, as we all went our separate ways. After a short while, I caught up with Koizumi. I should thank you. Koizumi smiled as though it was nothing. You're quite welcome. The car chase was a bit much. The Tomorrow brothers had driven the police car. Had they been the real thing? I asked. I doubt if they were really even brothers. Let's leave it as they were my colleagues, who sometimes assume the identity of the master of a mansion and his younger brother, sometimes a venture capitalist and his younger brother, and sometimes a pair of police officers. What about Mori and Arakawa? I've become particularly suspicious of Mori's true identity. Is your organization working with Asahina and Nagato's bosses? Not directly, no. However, we seem to have come to a tacit understanding, and there were even times where we unwittingly worked towards the same goal. I myself no longer fully understand this world, and the agency itself is far from united. Koizumi shrugged as we walked down the alleyway. One extreme viewpoint is that there are no aliens or time travelers, that Nagato and Asahina are just pitiful, deluded girls. That obviously wasn't true, I said. I'd sign a testament if they wanted me to. Ha! But what if Nagato's magic and Asahina's time travel are all the actions of Suzumiya, and all the girls are mistaken in believing that they are the source of such things? If that was the reasoning, you could explain anything that way, I said. Or it might be that not Suzumiya who possesses this godlike power, but somebody else. Koizumi was probably trying to add some sarcasm to his smile, but all I saw was his usual handsome face. The eye of a hurricane is calm, but all around rages a terrible storm. There may be someone who looks in on the center from the outside. Are you not the one who's kept so busy by all these events? If you were the screenwriter, would you cast yourself in such a tiring role? This kind of vague explanation was Koizumi's specialty, but I owed him one, so I decided to listen, for once, although it was doubtful that I'd be able to remember everything he said. If I had that kind of memory, my grades would be a little better than they were. If I may speak frankly, my current problem is that I seem to be in the minority. If asked which side I belong to, the SOS Brigade comes to mind first and foremost. My feelings tend toward it, rather than toward the agency. So this is what I think. If the agency gave me an order that ran counter to the interests of the SOS Brigade, I might as well find myself upon the horns of a dilemma. I prepared myself to listen to another lengthy speech from Koizumi, but just this once, his digression was a brief one. He gave me an easy way and walked away. I returned home and sat down on the floor of my room, which contained shamisen and shamisen's scattered fur. My activities with Mikuru Asahina were finished. Asahina the Younger was next, which meant I still had work to do. In my hand was future letter number 6. When everything is over, go to the park. Since number 5 had instructed me to return Mikuru Asahina to her previous time plane, all that remained was to follow the instructions of number 6. But still, would everything really be over then? I couldn't help but feel like there was something else, though I had no idea why. It was like there was a tiny sardine bone stuck in my mind. But no matter how I turned it over in my head, without any new input there would be no new answers. So I reread all the letters I'd gotten from Asahina the Elder. Even now they were still completely incomprehensible, the presumed merits of our actions utterly baffling. Or so they had been. I was looking at the instructions of the third letter. Go to the mountains. There you'll see an oddly shaped rock. Move it approximately 3 meters west. Your Mikuru Asahina will know the place. This was the only one that was linked with Haruhi's activities. This was the only place where the entire SOS Brigade had been involved. The fruitless treasure hunt. We found nothing, as I had known we would. I felt like I was on the verge of figuring something out when my sister came barging in to inform me that dinner was ready, and I wound up leaving my room with a nagging feeling. I took a bath after dinner, and midway through washing my hair, I'd pretty much forgotten whatever I nearly hit upon. By the time I got into the bath proper and submerged myself up to my chin in hot water, the only thought in my mind was that of an early bedtime. But then, right at the end of the day, one last order came in. It wasn't from a time traveler, it was from Haruhi, and it didn't come via a note in my shoe locker, but instead through my sister, carrying the phone. "Count, phone, it's Harunyan," she said, barging into my bathroom and giving me the handset. I waved my hands and shooed her out of the room, then put the receiver to my ear. Hello? "Hey, are you in the bath?" Haruhi's voice echoed off the walls of the bathroom. I was in the bathroom, but she'd better not get any weird ideas, I told her. "Like I'd ever do that, stupid! Anyway, we're meeting up at the station tomorrow." Why was she calling me at this hour? She should have just told me about this before we split up this afternoon, I said. "Oh, come on! I got my own circumstances, you know." Did she ever think about anyone's circumstances but her own? I asked. Whatever. Anyway, we should meet up in the afternoon. Let's say 2 o'clock. You don't need to bring anything. And what about her? That's my business. Tomorrow at 2. Got it? And if you don't come, rest assured you will regret it. Punctuality above all. Haruhi-style phone etiquette involved delivering rapid-fire instructions, then hanging up immediately. I emerged from the bathtub, handset in hand, and thought it over as I toweled myself dry. So there was something left after all. What was it this time? So far this February, Haruhi had started out in a Nui mode, then done Setsubun, a treasure hunt, and a 2-day search for mysterious phenomena. Would this be the last? Hold on, why hadn't Mikuru Asahina told me about this? She never said anything about a station front rendezvous on Monday. Perhaps she wasn't involved. Perhaps she hadn't told me because she never known herself. Or, perhaps she did know and had said nothing. I just didn't want to hear that this part of history never existed. Showing up at a specified time, in a specified place, was fast becoming a conditioned response for me, and arriving 5 minutes before 2 and seeing the rest of the club assembled and waiting for me was more normal than spring following winter. For once, Haruhi didn't berate me for tardiness, nor did she even head for the cafe. Instead, we went to the bus terminal, where Haruhi herded me onto a northbound bus. Asahina, I noticed, was constantly yawning, then hurrying to hide her mouth. When I looked more closely, I saw that Haruhi was rubbing her eyes as though shortchanged on sleep herself. When she noticed me watching her, she gave me a glare and looked out the window as the green of the scenery turned deeper. Our bus was bound for the mountains, along the same route we'd taken the other day to reach Mount Tsuruya. The bus stop we got out of was the same too, and just when it looked like we were going to climb the summit using the same route. If we go this way, it's the long way around. It was the back way originally. We're going to go around to the south side and climb from there. Haruhi started striding along, followed by Asahina and Nagato, who evidently had no problem with another hiking session. Koizumi scratched his chin for a moment. Well, shall we go? We've gotten this far, so neither of us can back out now. We're alike in that way, he said inexplicably, chuckling like a pigeon. Haruhi circled the base of the mountain, making for the south side. I started to get an idea of where she wanted to go. I've been there a couple times myself already. 2 days in a row, in fact. The only other things around us other than mountains were dry fields. The first time I'd been here, I'd been climbing up with Mikuru Asahina. The second time, I'd been descending the mountain with the SOS Brigade. Haruhi took the lead up the animal path that led to the spot with the gourd-shaped rock. Of course. No wonder. The day we moved the rock, I noticed that Asahina seemed to know the way very well. I now saw that it was because she had been there twice. Asahina ascended rather perilously, being forcibly dragged behind Haruhi, Nagato guiding her from tumbling back down. We soon reached the spot. As soon as Haruhi emerged into the flat clearing on the mountainside, she sat down on the gourd-shaped rock as though it were her favorite chair. Kyon, Koizumi, this is a treasure hunt round 2. When you think about it, giving up after just 1 day of digging doesn't show much dedication. Treasure hunting is about keeping at it until you find something. Haruhi smiled brilliantly and produced 2 garden spades from within her coat, offering them to Koizumi and me. To be honest, I wanted to use big shovels and dig up every corner like last time, but I'll let you off the hook this time. You can use those spades and just dig around there. Haruhi indicated the spot right in front of her, in other words, directly behind the gourd rock. It was the same spot Koizumi and I had dug fully 2 meters down, but before I could complain that we already dug there... It's pretty common to find lost items in places you think you've already looked, right? Well, treasure's the same way. You gotta look over and over again in the same place for it, and if I say there's treasure, then there's treasure. Haruhi sounded more confident than a dog in the Hayasaka Jisan, like she was sure we were bound to meet wealth and good fortune. For whatever reason, Asahina just nodded happily in agreement, with Nagato being the only one whose expression was unchanged. There, with the spade in my hand for no particular reason, I finally began to understand the meaning of Koizumi's smile. The digging didn't take much time or effort. The soil had already been dug up and replaced in the one, so it was soft enough that our spades were more than adequate for the task. We hadn't dug very deeply when our spade tips bummed into the edge of something hard. As Haruhi grinned down from above, I dug the object loose and pulled it out of the ground. The rectangular box did not, it must be said, look like something from the Genroku era. It's more like a tin that cookies or rice crackers would come in. It hadn't been there 3 days earlier, when Koizumi and I had been searching. Someone had to come up here since then and bury it. I was sure of it. No points for guessing who. Open it! Said Haruhi, looking like the tongue-cut sparrow, watching the old man pick from the smaller basket. The folktale was about greed and how the smaller basket was filled with treasure instead of monsters, so in this case, she was definitely thinking this was treasure. I took the tin in hand and popped off the lid. I saw neither jewels nor gold coins, but I doubted anyone would dispute me where I call it treasure nonetheless. There were 6 small boxes delicately wrapped in beautiful wrapping paper, all tied up with ribbon, obviously. Finally was all I could say. I remember what day it was, or maybe it would be more accurate to say I realized. It was the day even more important than July 7th, Tanabata. At least it was for high school guys. Today was February 14th. In other words, Valentine's Day. They're handmade, explained Haruhi, looking askance. We worked from noon to nightfall to make them. Mikuru, Yuki, and I pulled a late shift for you guys. A late shift! Originally, I wanted to make them from pure cacao, but then I was like, let's not get too crazy, so we went with chocolate cake. Each of the 3 girls had written our names on the labels that adorned the wrapped packages. Both of us got a cake from each of them. Koizumi put down his spade, and after carefully brushing off his hands, he picked up one of the packages. To Koizumi from Mikuru, it said. Asahina had made treasures just for us. You bet she did, Haruhi fired off like a machine gun. We all did. It was pretty fun, and we gave it our all. But whatever, I was just worried that everything was going to get out of hand, and it was going to make me space out all the time. And to be honest, I was sort of worried I was just falling into society's trap, but so what? It's just a broadly accepted tradition. I feel bad for the people who think it's just a conspiracy by candy companies. It's fine! Yuki and Mikuru and I had fun, and that's what's important. We were thinking of putting hot peppers into them, but... Hey, Kyon, what's that look? It was nothing. I was just... grateful. It was true. I'd forgotten entirely that today was the day that made men the world over nervous. If I'd remembered, maybe I would have prepared an appropriate reaction, but having weathered this surprise attack, I had nothing to say to the 3 brigade girls. It was hard to ad-lib clever words to hide your embarrassment. I doubted I had enough life experience to pull it off. The strength drained from my body. All the riddles had been solved. Haruhi's strange mood and behavior starting in February, Asahina traveling back in time but finding it difficult to talk about the treasure hunt, Taniguchi's sulking and insistence that he envied me. Haruhi had been thinking about this all along. How to give us chocolates on Valentine's Day. She seriously couldn't get over herself, not even a little. How twisted did someone have to be to make us go on this treasure hunt and dig all these holes, then fill them back up again, instead of just giving us chocolate in the club room? Wait, that meant... Ha ha ha! Surya was in on it too. The treasure map had been a pack of lies. The reason Haruhi had given up on the treasure hunt was because she already knew there was no treasure. The treasure Haruhi had in mind had yet to be buried at that point. The chocolate cake, of which Koizumi and I now had 3 pieces. That had been the cause of this week of uncertainty on Haruhi's part. Nagato and Asahina had gotten dragged into it as well. What fools we were. Both Haruhi for coming up with such a plan, and me for not seeing through it. These are just friendly chocolates though, just friendly. I don't actually want it to stay stuff like just friendly though. And chocolate cake counts as chocolate, right? Haruhi's voice echoing in my head like insects chirping on a thicket. I summoned my strength and looked up. Haruhi glared at me with an angry face. Asahina wore a gently teasing smile, and Nagato regarded me expressionlessly. Thank you so much. I will savor every bite. Koizumi beat me to the punch. Haruhi's lips twisted into a smirk. I recommend eating them as soon as you get home. Just gobble them down in one go. Don't leave them on the family shrine for your ancestors to eat, got it? She turned her head away hurriedly, then stood. Okay then, let's go home. The event's over, and if we don't leave right away, we'll get stuck in traffic. I'm sleepy. We worked on those till sunrise, I'll have you know. And then we came up here in the morning and buried them. And I only caught a couple of hours of sleep at Yuki's place. The same goes for Mikuru and Yuki. We were on the way home, and as we stood waiting for the bus stop, Haruhi stood as far away from me as possible, gazing off into the distance, avoiding my eyes. Oh, brother. I whispered to Asahina, who stood next to me. You didn't give chocolate to someone you had a crush on? Just friends? No, she replied, sounding a bit desolate. Even if I did have a crush on someone here, I'd eventually have to return to the future. Our separation would be inevitable. It would be so sad. It was an extremely honest view to hold. I couldn't think of a single rebuttal. And yet, it was the position's obvious correctness that made me hesitate to agree with it. You know, you could just stay here, I said. This time period's not so bad. You could visit the future from time to time, but just keep your home here. Asahina giggled. Thanks. Her lips formed a soft smile that made me want to steal a kiss. But I wasn't born in this time. My home is there, in the future. No, to me, this is the past. I'm just a visitor. The future is my present, my home. I must return someday. Just like the princess from the bamboo cutter's tale, no matter what measures were taken to stop her, when the time came she had to leave Earth. It wasn't where she belonged. I guess I agreed with Asahina. If I jumped 100 years into the past, I might find it interesting at first, but I'm sure I'd miss the culture and technology of home. I'd want to play video games with ridiculous graphics, heat convenience store chicken bowls in the microwave, and send stupid text messages with my cell phone. More than anything else, I'd want to nap in my own room and enjoy my own time at my own space. Even if she could do all of those things, Asahina would always be aware that this wasn't her time. She was in the past. It was an unusual place for her to be in, and I could imagine that might never really feel comfortable. Oh, but... She began hastily, waving her hands. It's not that I don't like being here. It's very important, and I have to do my best. I'm just really glad that you're here with me, Kyon. It certainly made me happy to hear her say so. I thought I'd try something out. So, when you go back to the future, how about you take me along? Not that Haruhi would keep quiet if something like that happened. We could take everyone on a trip to the future. Haruhi and Nagato, and Koizumi too. I wouldn't complain. Hell, I'm starting to think that moving to the future wouldn't be a bad idea. What? Her fairy-like eyes widened. She was totally taken aback. No! Definitely not! That is absolutely forbidden, it's just... Asahina's face looked surprised for a while, but eventually she noticed my own expression. Gosh, Kyon, if you're gonna tell us as a joke, make it jokier next time. God, you really surprised me. Sorry. Yes, of course it was a joke. This was my time, my era. I'd encountered terrible challenges, especially the repeated time travel to 3 or 4 years ago. But I always come back to this time and place, in the SOS Brigade's club room. I hadn't even been a high school student for a year yet, and I was sure Haruhi had a lot of things she still wanted to do here and now. I wondered if the day would ever come when she would finish it all. It was a bit too early to be planning an escape to the future. The day would come when Asahina had to return to her own time. But for the moment, she was here, and that was enough. So long as we kept having fun here, the future would surely become a fun place too. She had once compared different time planes to pages in a flip book, and if I thought about it that way, if all the pages were full of gags, the last page couldn't possibly be horror. I'd never accept that. I mean, who would? I'd once lost my friends in the SOS Brigade and gotten them back. I'd never forget the determination I had then. Whatever happened from here on out, whether I stumbled or was defeated, I'd face ahead. I wasn't such a lightweight that I'd easily go back on my decision I'd made 2 months before. But leave me at my oh brother? That's special. In other words, no matter how cheap my pride was, it would have to be a little cheaper before I sell it off completely. As long as I faced forward, I could say, oh brother, if I wanted to. They were just words after all. The same went for, Haruhi, you idiot, or take me with you, or even saying nothing, Nagato style. In a 3-legged race, you have to tie your leg to your partner's leg. It was easier for 5 people to run a 6-legged race than it was for 1 person to do 3. If there was one thing I learned this week, that was it. I'd spent the last several days going back and forth between my house and the train station. I'd probably enjoy a respite from that for a while. Haruhi continued to ignore me, her back turned, not so much as giving me a proper goodnight. Our honorable brigade chief took large, resolute steps, but I wondered what sort of expression she would wear tomorrow at school. I gave my thanks to Asahina and Nagato as I reassured myself of their weight of their packages in my pocket.
I'm really sorry I couldn't tell you. Suzumiya made us promise not to say anything,
said Asahina, looking particularly regretful, her head bowed. I was impressed that Haruhi had the ability to silence even Nagato, although I was supposed it wasn't that difficult, since it was me who'd forgotten such an important day in the first place. Although things had been complicated for a while, it was though I'd simply dropped the concept of Valentine's Day entirely. When I got back to my room, I immediately opened the 3 packages, though I did not intend to eat them in lieu of dinner as Haruhi had suggested. Inside were plastic cases containing chocolate-coated pieces of cake. Haruhi's was round, Asahina's was heart-shaped, and Nagato's was in the shape of a star. Each one sported white chocolate lettering on it. Smack dab in the middle of Haruhi's was a simple, blunt chocolate, while Nagato's sported gift in neat serif font. Asahina's said just friends on it, which seemed a bit uncharacteristically blunt to me, until I noted another message hitting at the bottom of the cake's plastic case, hurriedly scrawled out on the corner of a paper towel. Suzumiya made me write that, it said. I imagined the scene of the 3 of them having a lively time together making cakes in Nagato's kitchen. I put the 3 cakes in the refrigerator. I couldn't forget to tell my sister not to go and eat them. Once the sun was down, I got on my bike and started the pedal. The last checkpoint was a certain bench in a certain park near Nagato's apartment. The park was dark and deserted, and there sat a bench unoccupied beneath the streetlight. I stopped my bike, and as I pushed it into the park, I still did not see a soul. I sat on the chilly bench and raised my voice to the empty space. I know you're there, Asahina. The evergreen shrubs behind the bench rustled, and slowly around the bench came the person I was waiting for.
May I sit?
But of course. I'm expecting this to be a long talk, I told her. She giggled.
I'm afraid I won't be able to tell you that much.
I confirmed that it was Asahina the Elder's elegant form on the bench beside me. The winter wardrobe's version of adult Asahina didn't look any different from the random person on the street, assuming you didn't count her heart-melting beauty. I breathed in the winter air, then spoke. You're going to explain things, aren't you?
Where shall I start?
The first errand Asahina and I ran. The prank. We pounded nails into the ground, then covered them with a can, and thereby sent a man to the hospital. It seemed like ages ago.
There was a reason you had to do that.
Asahina's face had a faintly visible smile that I could see from an oblique angle.
Kyon, I want you to imagine something. If you could go back into the past, years or even decades.
She sounded serious.
Imagine that you can go back in time and witness history. But what if that history wasn't the history you knew? What if it were different?
What do you mean different? I didn't understand.
For example, suppose you traveled exactly 1 year into the past. What were you doing then?
Probably playing video games in my room. I don't have any memories of getting chocolate from anyone. Asahina nodded slightly.
Think about if that were different. If you went into your house of a year ago, but you weren't living there, what would you do? Neither you, nor your sister, nor your parents are there. Strangers you never met live in your house, and your family doesn't live in the house you know, but instead live a totally different life somewhere far away.
Well, that's absurd.
When we come into the past and find that the history we're expecting is subtly different, can you see what we in the future would think? Assuming that the past is constantly subject to an intervention from the future. Assuming that if left alone, our future would never come to be, and instead a different future would happen.
Asahina's voice sounded distant, as though she were lost in thought.
A past where a person dies when they are meant to keep on living. A past where two people were supposed to meet and never do. If we knew that, left alone, the past would never lead to our future.
A shadow fell over her already lonely-sounding voice.
I'll get to the point. The man who injured himself kicking the can you placed will meet a certain woman in the hospital. They will get married, have children, and those children will have children. That is all because he went to the hospital. There is no other point in history where they can meet.
My mind flashed back to the image of the man smiling pleasantly as he looked up at Asahina and me.
The memory device was the same. The data on it needed to be sent in that form. The person who sent it ends up in an accident discovering the same data. But in this past, that coincidence wasn't going to happen. Perhaps it was deleted, so we had to send it to him, in as coincidental a form as possible.
Someone picks up the device after it's been dropped in a sunflower bed and happens to send it to a random address. His address. Asahina explained that. I didn't know what to say. There was no way something like that could be a coincidence. Plus, the jerk had shown up and handed us the data. What had been the point of his interference? I wanted to know.
He wasn't interfering. That data was necessary for his future too. That's how he was able to come back to this time.
Asahina spoke very clearly.
For us in the future, that was a predetermined event. But for you, and the person who will receive the data, it was a mere coincidence. That's just how time works.
I felt dizzy, possibly because the limits of my imagination had been so easily shattered.
The turtle and that boy, that was also a coincidence. The boy always remembered getting the turtle from the man and woman in the river. He remembers the ripples in the river when the man threw the turtle into the water and how he flowed lazily along the current. Turtles live long lives, and every time he looks at this turtle, he remembers that scene. That gives rise to a kind of fundamental theory, though it was the result of many other elements as well.
The possibility made me dizzy even as my imagination leapt forward. Was that boy going to invent the time machine? The near-miss traffic accident, the turtle. Had I changed the future? The future for that boy, and the future of the whole world? All because of a few insignificant things I had done? Suddenly, a different memory came back to me. A few days before the school festival, when I was in agony trying to finish our film's climax, Nagato had said something to me. In order to stabilize the future, the correct values must be input. Asahina Mikuru's job is inputting those values. My memory was pretty good, but this was not the time to relish it. No. What I was concerned about was how the phrase, in order to stabilize the future. I could no longer assume that there was only one future. Probably. I wasn't sure, so I couldn't speak with confidence. What understanding I had gotten me this far as the following, through my mind, was wild with question marks. Was the future not a stable thing? Were there other futures beside this one from which Asahina came? I could admit the possibility, but just barely. If the future divulged into separate branches, that could mean that there was a future in which that glasses-wearing boy lived and one where he died. Except that I'd erased that possibility of the latter, which meant I had single-handedly obliterated an entire future. I didn't know if that were really true. The basis for the conjecture was so shaky that I would be an idiot to suggest that proof was left as the exercise of the reader, yet I could not easily dismiss that wild notion. I was mute, struck dumb. How else could I react?
The divergence points were concentrated in this time period. While most paths would lead to the same future, everything you did the past few days was connected to a divergence point, a path that would lead to a different future.
Her lovely voice got quieter.
There will soon come an even larger divergence point. There is a very powerful future. If you should choose it, it would not be very good for our future.
My body felt heavy and sluggish somehow. I tried to look over at Asahina, but my head was strangely stiff.
But it will be okay. I trust you after all, right?
My consciousness began to blur. A familiar diagram emerged from within the mist. Koizumi's explanation. There were 2 X's. It was impossible to completely erase the past. Once modified, history would simply be rewritten over from the original timeline. And I had another memory. The loop during summer vacation. We'd repeated the same 2 weeks tens of thousands of times over. But no one save Nagato could remember. It was though those tens of thousands of repetitions had never happened, so the answer was clear. The past could be negated. In fact, it wasn't even a question of whether a certain past had or had not existed. Even if something had happened, if nobody remembered it, it didn't matter. Which was why you just had to erase the memories of the past. If my memories of the period from December 17th to December 21st were erased, my memories of all that running around, of jumping back 3 years into the past and being stabbed by Asakura, and I'd simply woken on that hospital bed, what then? I would simply have believed Koizumi's explanation, that I'd fallen down the stairs, hit my head, and lost 3 days of memory. Nagato, the literature club girl, Asahina from the calligraphy club, Haruhi, the girl from another school who looked alarmingly good in a ponytail, and Koizumi, the normal guy. If my memories of them were erased, I wouldn't have to worry about jumping back to preserve the integrity of the time loop. But no, that wasn't right. On the morning of the 18th, on the verge of death after being attacked by Asakura, I saw future us, and so I knew that I would go back in time again. And the only one who could repair Nagato was her 3 years previous self, and it was Nagato from this last January 2nd who put that repair into action. That much was necessary. And time was rewritten. I felt a chill. Haruhi had no idea. Neither did Taniguchi or Kunikita. The only ones who knew were Nagato, Asahina, and me. Plus, after hearing my report, Koizumi. Which meant there was no guarantee I wasn't in the same position as Haruhi. If history had been changed somewhere, even if I had once known of it, without any memory of it, it would be as though nothing had ever happened. Not just that, there even the possibility that the version of myself who was thinking these things could be overwritten by another version with another timeline. A timeline in which my present self would cease to exist and a different me would continue into the future. I thought of what Nagato had said in the hospital room. Erasure of all your relevant memories. No guarantee such erasure has not taken place. The Asahina who had come from 1 week in the future told me that she had not met her other self, which is why I'd gone into such lengths to make sure they never did meet. But even if they had, it might have not even been such a problem. The current Asahina's memories of such an encounter could simply just be erased. If she were then sent back in time after such erasure, it wouldn't much matter whether or not she encountered herself. A dark feeling rumbled in the pit of my stomach, the same feeling I had toward the data overmind as I laid in the hospital bed last month, only this time, the emotion was directed at Asahina the Elder. She was simply using her former self, Asahina the Younger, forcing her to constantly play the confused, unreliable but cute classmate. Oh sure, I knew she had no choice but to do so. I understood that she had to retrace the history that she herself remembered experiencing. The future's countermeasures against the past, Koizumi had said that. But wasn't there some other way? My next curse on my head was finally broken. It felt like I had just taken an hour just to look sideways. But when I went to speak the truth that came to mind, I realized no one was sitting there. Asahina had disappeared. I was the only one sitting on the bench of the faint glow of the streetlight. In her place, there had been a small box. A small, square, ribbon-wrapped box. There was a message card attached to it. I held it up to the light. It carried a single greeting. Happy Valentine's Day. The chocolates inside were fairly normal. There was nothing futuristic about their flavors or shapes. Either the chocolatiers of Asahina's world had not changed their recipes much, or they matched the chocolate to its destination era. But still, Asahina. I didn't want to think that I would concede so easily. Yes, today, she deviated and provided me with information, but it still wasn't enough. I'd even accepted her reason for not telling me about her kidnapping. But she deliberately refrained from saying anything about Haruhi's Valentine's Day plans or the truth of the treasure hunt in Gordstone. That was totally meaningless, even now. Haruhi could have buried those chocolates anywhere. There was no reason it had to be next to that particular rock, and there was no reason for me to move said rock. Or was this a part of your plan too, Asahina the Elder? Were the things I was thinking and doing right now among your predetermined events? When everything was over, huh? Seemed like that was not today. I'd eventually come here again. And maybe I'd bring the rest of the SOS brigade along. I'd love to see her try to explain all this to Haruhi and Koizumi. All I was good for was playing the observer. I placed a phone call from the park. Hello? Tsuruya, it's me. Yeah, about Mikuru. She's gone home. I really appreciate everything you did for her, and I'll definitely get your clothes back to you. Huh? Oh, really? Oh, okay, listen, when you see Asahina, tomorrow, she might randomly start apologizing. Just let it slide. And there should be a North High uniform she left in your apartment. So you could bring that to school tomorrow? Yeah. Before the end of class. So far, so good. I listened to Tsuruya's cheerful, okay, and took a deep breath. There's one more thing, and this is an important one. It's about your family's mountain. The one from the treasure map? Yeah, that one. Haruhi used it in this crazy roundabout scheme of hers to... Yes, I got them. 3. Yes, it was a lot of fun. I continued talking over the sound of Tsuruya's laughter. It's about the treasure map. Did you know that there's a trail that leads from the fields of the base straight up to the south side? Oh, good. That'll make this faster. If you follow it, you'll come to a flat open area. Oh, you know that one too. There's a rock there. If you go about 3 meters east and dig, you might find something interesting. Tsuruya's response sounded doubtful. No, I don't have any proof myself, so it's not 100% guarantee, but I get the feeling that there might be something. If I hadn't moved the rock, Haruhi would have taken it for a marker the moment she laid eyes on it, and we would have wound up digging right next to it, and we might as well found something. Something we should never have found. 3 meters west. That was how far I traveled after picking up the rock. Just that far. I gave Tsuruya some vague responses, then hung up. There's your piece of defiance from me, Asahina. I'm not trying to outwit you or your future, but sometimes a guy just wants to give something a try. After all, I wasn't nearly as audacious as Haruhi. The next morning, I barely arrived at the classroom in time for the first bell. Ignoring the irritated-looking Taniguchi as well as Kunikita, who was already teasing him, I took my seat and spoke to the person behind me. Hey, how's it going? Great, obviously. Haruhi flashed a Cheshire cat grin full of intrigue at me. Goodness, but she hasn't even glared at me first. Could she, too, flip moods over the course of a single night? As the bell rang, she leaned forward over her desk and whispered into my ear from behind me. Hey, Kyon, let's get something straight. Don't go talking about what happened yesterday. Especially to, say, Taniguchi. You gotta keep it secret, got that? It would be well, not embarrassing, but still. Don't go spreading rumors. It will ruin the value of the gift. What the hell was she mumbling about? I wasn't giving the gift back, I told her. Especially since it was edible. I didn't tell you to give it back. If that were the case, I wouldn't have given it to you in the first place. Also, changing the subject, we're gonna be busy after school today, so prepare yourself. I knew all too well. I'd be busy myself, as it happened. I had to send Asahina 8 days back in time, then be there to greet the returning version of herself, and then, finally, this long week will be over. During the lunch period, Tsuruya came by my classroom. Fortunately, Haruhi rarely brought her own lunch from home, and she had gone in the cafeteria to eat. As soon as I heard Tsuruya's, "Hey, Kyon!" I set aside my half-eaten lunch and headed out to the hallway, where she waited. Not here! Dragging me by the necktie to the stairway, then leading me all the way up just past the top floor to the roof level, stopping just before the door. Haruhi had dragged me up to the dim little landing here once before, and then, as now, it was scattered with art supplies. So, I'll just get straight to the point, said Tsuruya, smiling cautiously as she produced a stack of photos from her breast pocket. Kyon, how'd you know there was something buried in that spot? I was blown away, seriously! So there had been something there. I asked what it was. Something amazing! Tsuruya fanned out the photos. The first thing that surprised me when I started digging was this pot just popping up to say hello. 300 years old! She showed me a photo of the earthen pot, covered in cracks, photographed against a plain white background. Are you sure it's that old? Super sure! I even had it carbon dated, but what was inside was even more surprising. The second photograph showed an old piece of parchment. It seemed like a name was written on it, but I couldn't make it out. One thing was for sure. At the edge of the paper was a drawing of a very familiar mountain with an X on it. I don't need to tell you what the X indicated.
This was definitely written by Fujiman Tsuruya, my ancestor. It was the 15th year of the Genroku era, 1702! A quick translation of it reads, I found a strange object, but it made me feel uneasy, so I buried it on the mountain.
Haruhi's treasure map. She had said that something similar was written on it, but that one was a fake. This was for real.
But what was old man Fuseiman even thinking? How are we supposed to find the treasure if buried on the map on the same spot?
Said Tsuruya, smiling as she indicated a third photograph. What's this? The photograph gave no sense of the scale, but it looked like a metal rod about 10 centimeters long. It was so shiny you'd never think it had been buried for centuries, and close inspection revealed that the surface was covered in spider web fine lines, like a circuit board. Although the pattern looked disorderly at first, I realized that it actually had a beautiful symmetry. Was it really made during the Edo period?
This and that letter were all inside the pot, but here's the real question. Nobody will believe that something like this came out of my ancestor's time capsule!
Well, why not? Tsuruya grinned, waving the photos.
Because this thing is made out of titanium cesium alloy!
Okay, that was a surprise. I'd have to find Kudakita later so I could tell him and freak myself out all over again.
Metallurgy from 300 years ago could never create something like this, you know. The person I had do the testing had no idea. They said that if this really came from 300 years ago, it was either the product of some ancient advanced civilization or a time traveler from the future had time traveled back to 1702 and left it there. Or it was a fragment of an alien spaceship.
I really didn't want it to be from some ancient civilization.
But doesn't it look like a component for something else?
Said Tsuruya, staring at the third photograph, then aiming her smile at me.
What do you think it is, Kyon? What do you like better, aliens or time travelers?
The innocent girl's question left me totally speechless.
You better decide soon, boy!
The mysterious artifact that had come out of the clay pot, which in tune bore the Tsuruya crest, would be stored securely at the Tsuruya estate. Tsuruya herself promised, so that was one thing I didn't have to worry about. She would definitely do what she said she'd do. The most important thing was to make sure Haruhi didn't find out about it, but I must confess to a certain misgiving. I didn't want things to turn out this way, to be honest. I didn't even want to think about it, but I couldn't escape that feeling. The feeling that we need that artifact, eventually. I wonder if I'd given Tsuruya the location of the treasure too soon. I could have also have kept it to myself, neither digging it up nor telling anyone else about it. But was that really possible? Could I have resisted digging it up once I realized there was probably something interesting there? I was a curious guy. When I saw a word I didn't know, I always had to immediately go look it up in the internet. Plus, there was the other possibility, that for some reason Haruhi would want to go back and dig some more. It was better for the mysterious part to be taken in by Tsuruya's family. If a member of an ancient race, or an alien, or a time traveler showed up and demanded to be returned, I doubted very much that Haruhi would simply agree. Plus, I didn't want anyone like that showing up in front of her in the first place. There was no guarantee they would hide their true forms the way Nagato and Asahina did. Rather than traveling back in time to change the present before it happened, it was better to do what I could in the present to avoid bad outcomes in the future. We did live in the present, after all. Tsuruya and I parted ways, and I returned to the classroom, where I came upon Haruhi happily eating my lunch.
Hey, what the? That's mine! I know, even I wouldn't eat the lunch of someone I don't know, you know.
Well, if there's someone you do know, you should also know you can't just eat their lunch, I said. Give it back. Spit it out.
Anyway,
said Haruhi, putting the chopsticks back in my lunchbox and pushing it towards me, then looking up at me with a strange expression.
What are you making that weird face for? Stop grinning.
Grinning? Was there a reason I should grin? But when I put my hand to my face, I found that Haruhi was right. The muscles in my face had somehow relaxed into a smile.
You look weird,
said Haruhi rudely, then turned away. Her hair rustled with the movement, her small ears peeking through. In that instant, I realized it. I realized why I was unconsciously grinning. What reason would I have to smile? What had happened to me this past week? Besides wandering all over the place with Asahina, I encountered a new time traveler and a new mysterious organization, which had kidnapped Asahina among other dastardly deeds. Not only did they seem likely to appear again, but likewise the rival alien faction would probably show its face again as well, and now a mysterious artifact has been found in Tsuruya's mountain. It was surely no time to be grinning like an idiot. Yet, anyone who genuinely believes that is a fool, and I had no intention of being a fool. If I was smiling, I had a reason for it. Yes, indeed. And I realized what it was. I'd already dealt with a series of incredible events, and more seemed likely to come my way, yet I was not even slightly disturbed. Whoever or whatever might come, I didn't care. I wasn't the least bit afraid of them. If they were gonna come, bring it on. I'll face anything. But I wouldn't be alone. When the time came, I'd have Nagato beside me, and Koizumi, and Asahina. In front of me might be Haruhi herself, standing tall. Perhaps Tsuruya would be behind me, giggling away. If the mysterious forces of the universe wanted to face all that, then let them come. Be they foe, ally, neutral party, or sharer of some common goal, I didn't care. I put the lid back on the lunchbox that Haruhi returned to me, then wrapped it up in a napkin before putting it in my bag. I might have looked weird, but Haruhi's expression as she regarded me was still weirder. Did I really look that strong? Hey, Haruhi. What? Haruhi furrowed her brow. You better take care of the SOS Brigade. Haruhi's mouth hung open for a moment.
Of course I will.
The corners of her eyes and mouth curled up in her characteristic smile as she shouted,
I mean, it's my brigade after all.
After school, I had to arrange for the two Asahinas to switch places, but that wasn't all I had to do. There was still Haruhi's plan. It wasn't that I'd forgotten. Haruhi just hadn't told me she planned to raise such a commotion. I'd been informed that Haruhi would be holding a lottery, with Asahina presenting the prize while wearing a Shrine Maiden outfit. What I hadn't realized was that the lottery prize would be this.
The SOS Brigade presents Mikuru Asahina's handmade belated Valentine's Day chocolate. 500 yen to enter,
proclaimed Haruhi, wielding a megaphone as I cursed my naivete for not anticipating this eventually. For the Mikuru Asahina's handmade belated Valentine's Day chocolate, we wound up needing a huge amount of paper for the entries, and even with an entry cost of 500 yen, people were fighting with one another to pay up. It looked like we'd reached 5 digits of earnings. If it had been the chocolate cake she'd given me, I never would have let it near this accursed market. But Asahina seemed to have made one extra piece in addition for what she made for Koizumi and me.
Actually, it was mostly Nagato who made it,
said Asahina apologetically. The Shrine Maiden costume she'd been forced into wear was so perfect that if she were teleported to a shrine, she would fit right in. Haruhi had gotten the costume somewhere, and the instant homeroom was over, she dragged Asahina off to the club room and forced her to change into it. It looked like she took what I said at Setsubun quite seriously. At Haruhi's behest, Koizumi and I brought the table down from the club room into the courtyard while Haruhi ran around with a megaphone. Nagato handled cashier duties. Male students started to swarm the courtyard like zombies in search of fresh meat, fomenting a terrible atmosphere that made you wonder where this country was headed. I saw Kunakita and Taniguchi in the crowd, and I began to worry for the future of my classmates. Haruhi gave instructions to the many male and few female students in the crowd.
The cashier is this way. Line up in front of Yuki. Once you've paid your 500 yen, you'll receive a numbered ticket. Take it to Koizumi, and he'll write it in whatever slot you want. You can draw one horizontal line wherever you like.
Nagato was handling the line quite efficiently, and beside her, Koizumi was frantically drawing vertical lines on B4 copier paper. It looked like entries would reach 3 digits, which meant 2 or 3 sheets of paper weren't going to be close to enough. As the number of sheets Koizumi taped together increased, so did too the number of times I checked my watch. This was very, very bad. I wasn't going to make it in time. Michiru Asahina would be back at 4:16. I had to send this Asahina back in time by 4:15, and I need time to get her changed out of her Shrine Maiden outfit before. It had just passed 4 o'clock, and Nagato and Koizumi still hadn't finished taking entries and setting up the grid. Asahina stood and held the decoratively wrapped prize, her smile looking a bit forced for a mascot. It was too chilly to be dressed as a Shrine Maiden, but this really wasn't the time to be thinking about details like that. As I was mentally calculating how long it would take her to get out of this outfit and into her school uniform, the Amidakuchi setup was fully completed. As I expected, if you rolled up the series of papers, you'd have a decent-sized scroll. Haruhi casually picked up the pen and chose one of the dozens of vertical lines, at the bottom of which she drew a heart. Then, as an afterthought, she added several more horizontal bars, just to mix things up.
Now then, whoever reaches the heart will receive Asahina's chocolate. The winner will surely rejoice. We'll start from the right side.
If she'd only start from the heart mark and worked backward, this could all be done in one go. Why'd she have to waste so much time? I understood her desire to rile up the audience by gradually building tension, but it was incredibly inconvenient for me. Haruhi had no inkling of my impatience. She set up a CD player down on the table and hit the play button. An energetic classical theme began to fill the space. It was the infernal gallop from Orpheus in the Underworld. What was this supposed to be, Sports Day? I'd have to resort to my trump card. Fortunately, I was sitting next to the goddess of lotteries. Sorry, Nagato. Pretending to look at the pile of bills and coins collecting in the rice cracker tin, I whispered into the ear of the cashier sitting motionless in a folding chair. I need this to be over in a single draw. There's no time. Nagato was gazing at the Shrine Maiden, who shivered from the combination of cold and nervousness. Her eyes moved to regard me, then without so much as a word, she stood. Just before Haruhi began tracing lines down with a red pen, Nagato reached her hand out and added a single horizontal segment. 10 minutes later, I had Asahina's hand in mine and was running with her to the clubroom.
What? Kyon, wait, it hurts. What's going on?
She cried as I dragged her to keep up with me, but I didn't have time to be considerate. There were barely 5 minutes left. I'll explain later. Right now, we have to hurry. I carried my petite schoolmate up the stairs 3 steps at a time. As far as the Amidakuchi went, Nagato made my wish come true. The very first student won, which left both Haruhi and the rest of the onlookers feeling let down, but hey, somebody had to win. Haruhi was determined to keep the energy level high, so she switched the background music to See the Conquering Hero Comes, dragging the student with the winning ticket, number 56, up to stand in front of Asahina. Incidentally, the winner was a curly-haired freshman girl, whose embarrassed fidgeting left an impression on me. Amid the strangely warm atmosphere, Asahina awkwardly handed the prize to the girl, then shook hands with her at Haruhi's behest, at which point everybody inexplicably applauded. I endured it, watching Haruhi produce a Polaroid camera from somewhere and take a snapshot of the 2 girls, but that was my limit. I took Asahina's hand without waiting for a discussion, and I dragged her off before I even had time to think of an excuse. We reached the clubroom.
Kyon, what's going...
Asahina's suspicion was understandable. I quickly pulled her into the room. Hurry! Change! Her uniform was hanging on the clothes rack. I thrust it at her. You got 3 minutes! Hurry! I don't know if I was intense or simply scary, but either way, Asahina nodded but made no move to actually change her clothes. I was just about ready to start removing them myself when she pointed at the door with a pale fingertip. What?
Please wait outside!
I was out in a single second. I stood in front of the door, glaring at my watch. 12 minutes, 33 seconds. Asahina, are you done?
Wait, please.
There was no time to allow my imagination to run wild with the sound of rustling fabric. I was anxious enough just worrying about Haruhi following me back to the clubroom. Asahina!
Just a bit more.
It was 4:14. I couldn't wait any longer. I barged back into the room.
Kyon, I'm not...
Asahina froze, her hands at the fastener of her school uniform's blouse. The red trousers and white jacket of her shrine maiden costume were scattered on the floor, proof that she really had been hurrying. I will pick him up later. I grabbed both of her shoulders and pushed her against the door of the broom closet.
Kyon...
I heard her cries as I pushed her recklessly back, which wasn't a great idea. Her foot slipped, and the force of my pushing made me push her right over, and I fell onto her.
What? No!
What the hell was I doing? There was no time to gaze at her weakly shaking head as she laid out on the floor. I picked up the school uniformed girl, slammed the steel door of the broom closet open, and shoved her inside. Asahina, listen to me. Listen very carefully. Right now, you must travel 8 days back in time. Do you understand? Just do it. Asahina was stunned, tears still in the corners of her eyes.
But without authorization...
Just do it, right now!
8 days back? What time?
Shit, I had to remember. What time had it been? Kyon, you told me to go 8 days back to... 3:45 p.m., and hurry!
Oh, okay. Huh?
Asahina looked up at me like a small frightened animal, then placed one hand to her head.
I haven't even made the request yet, and authorization's already come. Space-time coordinates 8 days ago, February 7th, 3:45 p.m. to right here? What? Top priority code.
You'll understand once you get there. I'll be waiting for you. I'll take care of you somehow. And tell him I said hi. 10 seconds till 4:15. I gave the shocked Asahina a nod as I closed the broom closet door. I heard no breathing from within the steel enclosure. There's an old saying, what goes around comes around. If you do something for somebody else, eventually it'll come back around to you, and for better or for worse. I never felt the truth of that statement more than I did at that moment. The person responsible for my panic state at this moment was none other than myself, who 2 days earlier had given Asahina the return time of 4:16 p.m. When I'd chosen that time, I never imagined that I'd be cutting things so close. Either way, it's my own fault. Asahina? I spoke to the closet. There was no answer. I knew it was pointless. I couldn't give any warnings to my past self. I knew because I hadn't myself heard of any such warnings, and Asahina didn't say anything about them to me. I wanted to say something, but I was out of time. My watch display now indicated 3 seconds past 4:15. It was extremely quiet. All I could hear was the sound of the breeze and the noise that rode in on it. I stood in front of the broom closet and continued the wait. Clunk. That wasn't the sound exactly, but there was a sound from within the closet, something that was not a broom. I couldn't hear breathing, but I sensed someone. At exactly 4:16, the plain old steel closet felt somehow more like a piece of antique furniture. I opened the door and said the line I'd prepared especially for the occasion. "Welcome home, Asahina." She was wearing a long coat and shawl I hadn't seen in 2 days, the clothes she'd borrowed from Tsudiya.
Oh,
Asahina looked down, bashful, then slowly lifted her face back up. Her crystal eyes hesitantly rose to meet mine, then stopped. Finally, her faintly smiling lips bloomed into a voice.
I'm back.
It would have been nice to savor the moment for a while, but the circumstances Asahina and I found ourselves in would not allow that. I had to have her change out of the street clothes she was wearing, but I hadn't gotten her school uniform back from Tsudiya yet. With no other option, I wound up having Asahina change back into her shrine maiden outfit clothing as I stood in the hall, slumped against a clubroom door. Haruhi and the others were sure taking their sweet time. It was convenient for me, sure, but I worried that it was a little too convenient. Meanwhile, along came a person carrying a paper bag in her hand, a person whose arrival would have saved me some trouble if it had been a little bit sooner. "Yoo-hoo! Kyon, apologies! Here, I got Mikuru's uniform and her school shoes. I was gonna give them to you during lunch, but I totally forgot. Tsudiya closed the distance between us with a few steps. "So, Haruhi and the others are up to something in the courtyard, but where's Mikuru?" She grinned as I pointed wordlessly at the clubroom door, then turned the doorknob as though she was casually opening her own refrigerator. "Hey, yeah, Mikuru! Getting changed? Hey, perfect timing! I'll just take those clothes home with me!" Tsudiya winked at me, then went into the room. Staring discreetly at the opposite wall in the hallway, I couldn't see into the room, but it was still easy for me to imagine Asahina's surprised face. I've seen it so many times before, after all. "Here, let me help! Time to change! Time to change!" I sat down in the hallway, listening to Asahina's frantic cries and Tsudiya's childish laughter. Tsudiya probably didn't care why Asahina was wearing the clothes Tsudiya had supposedly lent to her long-lost sister. Both she and I knew that trying to explain it was pointless. Tsudiya's greatness lay in the fact that she wasn't worried about it. I doubted I would ever reach her level in my lifetime. I smiled ruefully, just as Haruhi returned with Nagato and Koizumi in tow, the latter carrying a folding table on his back. She strode towards me, proudly rattling the tin full of money, as though she were a fisherman and this was her big haul. "Why'd you drag Mikuru away? We got booed!" I'd been afraid she would catch a cold if she were outside those flimsy clothes any longer, I told her. Besides, it was a waste not to charge at least 500 yen for the aesthetic appeal of that costume. "Yeah, good point. I see what you're saying. We gotta go all out in times like this. People will stop appreciating us otherwise." Haruhi readily agreed. Perhaps she already started the second phase of her plan. "Anyway, Kyon, I was really surprised. Yuki started giving out consolation prizes." She patted the girl on her slender shoulders. "You know those bargain-sized bags of chocolates? The kinds with the letters of the alphabet and stuff like that? Yuki passed out to everybody who lost the game. I was really surprised she did that kind of preparation. Yuki, you were really thinking ahead. But it's a good idea. We'll have consolation prizes next time we do something like this, and it'll definitely loosen people's wallets." I was sure they only wanted to get close to Nagato, but I was deeply moved by her quick thinking. She bought me that time that I desperately needed. Nagato moved slightly, as though indicating that she wanted to get inside the room and start reading. It was an expression only I could read. Just then, the door opened from the inside. "Oh, Tsudiya, you're here. What's up with those clothes?" "Hey, Haruhi, I lent these to Mikuru, just trying to get them back so I won't get in your way." Tsudiya draped the coat over her shoulder, putting the remaining clothes in a bag and spinning a shoe on the tip of her finger. "See ya, Haruhi." "Sure, see you later, Tsudiya." After exchanging a high five with Haruhi, Tsudiya disappeared down the hallway, having not even once so much as indicated that anything strange was going on, as though it were a totally ordinary day. I'd never be that good of an actor. She was a person to be reckoned with. The Tsudiya clan would prosper so long as she was around. Nagato drifted into the room, artlessly taking a book from the shelf, opening a folding chair, and immediately sitting down to read. Watching out of the corner of her eye as I helped Koizumi bring the table in, Haruhi didn't even seem to notice that Asahina, in her shrine maiden outfit, was looking a bit nostalgic. "Mikuru, next time you go buy tea, go ahead and buy the expensive stuff. Our war chest is pretty full now, thanks to you. Be happy, Mikuru. These grades mean I'm promoting you to the 2nd Lieutenant Brigade Chief." Watching Haruhi sit at the brigade chief's desk looking immensely pleased with herself, I secured a seat at the edge of the table and collapsed on it, exhausted. I was so tired. I now understood all too well what it was like to tamper with time in order to make events match up. Even if I wanted to blame someone, I'd been the one to do it all, so the responsibility target would be painted squarely on me. Were things always this hard for time travelers? If so, I'd have to be careful not to tell Asahina anything for a while. She was carrying a heavy psychological load, and she might roll into a ball like that pill bug at the slightest prod.
You could have shared some of that burden with me, you know. Cleaning up after messes is my specialty,
said Koizumi, quietly enough that only I could hear as he removed the wrapping on the booster pack of trading cards. I looked up to see Koizumi scrutinizing the cards and smiling. Our eyes met.
I wonder which hairstyle would go best with this outfit.
I heard Haruhi say she sat Asahina down in a chair and was playing around with her hair. As I watched, Asahina narrowed her eyes like a cat whose fur was being brushed. Didn't you say something about Haruhi's behavior not being any different than usual?
That's exactly what I mean. Treasure hunting and city patrols are the kinds of things Suzumiya would do. Or rather, she was deliberately trying to appear as though she were simply doing her usual activities. Nobody would have thought you'd actually forgotten Valentine's Day, not even Suzumiya. It's a day every high school boy worries about, whether or not he has someone likely to give him a present. The 2 consecutive days of patrolling were the embodiment of that. It was designed to make you agonize over whether or not you'd actually get anything.
She could have just put the chocolates in my shoe locker or something. It wasn't only a post office box for time travelers, after all.
Suzumiya simply hates conventionality. No doubt she thought that to not be very interesting. But toiling to dig up buried treasure makes it much more rewarding when you finally find it.
Koizumi continued to rearrange the cards in his hand.
I was very pleased myself, were you not?
What was that, some kind of leading question? Just as I was trying to think of an effective rebuttal.
Hey, Kyon, Koizumi, no more private chatter. Break time's over.
Asahina stared at the sudden exclamation, which got both Koizumi's and my attention. Haruhi removed her hands from the ching-nong into which she arranged Asahina's hair.
Now, it's time for a lecture.
She tapped the whiteboard.
Kyon and Koizumi, especially, you guys listen up.
The strategist's smile flickered across the brigade chief's face, and she spoke like a crammed school instructor addressing a group of pleasant but yes-then-bright students.
We're gonna discuss activities for the month of March.
I thought about the March calendar. Oh, like, Hitamatsuri? Haruhi was silent for a moment.
Yes, good point. That too.
So she'd forgotten about it, I said.
I remembered it. If you want to enjoy new experiences, it's important to learn from the past. So obviously I'd never forget something like that. So on March 3rd, yes, we'll scatter Hinaare from the top floor balcony.
That was the first time I heard of that particular Hinamatsuri tradition.
Be that as it may, there's another March event that we can't forget.
Haruhi's smile was as brilliant as the heart of the Milky Way galaxy as seen through a powerful telescope.
And today, I want you and Koizumi alone to carve that day into your brains.
So what was it that she was so excitedly lecturing us about?
I'm talking about White Day, March 14th. You gotta pay back every single girl who gave you anything on Valentine's Day with a reward 30 times greater.
Normally, she was like a blinkered horse charging madly ahead, so why did she always have to choose the most inconvenient times to turn suddenly conventional? I suppose the 30 times figure was the Haruhi inflation factor at work.
Yuki and Mikuru, you should ask for whatever you want. Those two,
Haruhi pointed to Koizumi and me,
will pay you back for everything you asked for. The days of crane spirits repaying your debts are long gone. Nowadays, humans do it too, and with better stuff than fabric too.
Haruhi grinned hugely.
I've thought of many examples of stuff I might want, but I'm still thinking about them. I'll reveal them soon though, and don't worry, I'll make sure it's something you can get within a month.
She certainly had no compunctions. She'll probably be just as bad as Kaguya-hime in The Bamboo Cutter's Tale, who sent all of her poor suitors on impossible tasks. I just prayed it wouldn't be something totally impossible, like find the Kingdom of Atlantis or discovering the Fountain of Youth. Okay, but we're gonna take into account the amount of time and effort we wasted on all that treasure hunting, I said. By the time I realized my retort was going to backfire, it was too late.
Well, of course,
said Haruhi, her eyes shining as though the entire Pleiades was concentrated within them.
I look forward to that. If you're gonna give me what I want, I'll go anywhere to get it. Even Mars, right, Mikuru? Yuki? You're with me, aren't you?
Asahina and Nagato both nodded, though Asahina reluctantly, and Nagato without looking up from her book. At this, I could only shrug, along with Koizumi, our timing perfectly in sync.